Hello, everybody. Welcome to November on Torn Book Club. We've had a little discussion in the chat before the show started that Temple's computer is slowly dying from a death of overheating. So we'll try to get through some stuff as quickly as we can so that she doesn't disappear. Um, for those of you who tuned in early today, you heard a little piece of music called "That's a Wrap" by one of my favorite composers, Thomas Bergerson. And the reason I chose that is because this month is National Novel Writing Month, and so we're going to be discussing some of the writing process this month. We're going to have a bit of a shorter month in November because of the big holiday, Thanksgiving. Um, so I'm going to be participating, sort of, this year in NaNoWriMo, as we call it, um, mostly as a way of kicking my butt into doing the rewrites for my book Ben. so so the piece that I was playing earlier is actually one of the pieces that inspires me a lot because it's of high adventure. Sounds kind of like something out of How to Train Your Dragon. Um, and I really do love that piece. And Ava is in the chat now. Hello, Ava. Um, a lot of people are showing up now. Rovandir, Temple, Eravandi. Um, so this month is November, and because it's the start of a new month, we have a new book of the month, which I announced last week. But here it is officially. The Blue Sword by Robin Mckinley. This was recommended to me by it was recommended to me by Temple. It's a I actually just finished it last night. I really liked it. Um, it's a really good fantasy book. I don't want to spoil too much because everybody else is going to be reading it. But one of the things that I did really like about this book in particular is the way that she characterizes the animals in it. Um, they're not just set pieces; like they're actual characters with actual moods and personalities, and I really enjoyed that in this book. So I hope that all of you enjoy it too. Um, Ava is talking about the song "That's a Wrap." Yeah, I guess you missed it, but it's a really good song, and I really it gets my creative juices flowing. Um, so what is Aravandi saying? I'm going to try to finish Silm this week, Silmarillion, I'm guessing, and then see if I can find the Blue Sword at the library. Yeah. Um, Temple says, I think that's something that would appeal to people who like Daenerys' story in Game of Thrones a bit. Yeah, I would agree. Like there are, um, I would say that the main character, Harry, uh, doesn't start off quite as weak as Daenerys does in Game of Thrones, but her progression and her own character arc throughout the story is definitely one of immense growth, much along the same lines as Daenerys. Um, so so yeah, don't want to go into too many spoilers with it. I hope that everybody else is able to find a copy and read it. If you're into audiobooks, there is an audiobook of it on Audible. Um, I believe there is an ebook version on Amazon, so if you have a Kindle or an e-reader, you can do it that way. Um, if not, it's an older book. Like I think it's from the 80s. I'm pretty sure that many libraries may still carry a copy, and would probably be easy to find if they do. Um, so this month is National Novel Writing Month. Um, and as I said, I'm going to be participating a little bit in trying to do rewrites for Ben. which was a book that I wrote about 10 years ago, that I've been wanting to redo, to make it more contemporary, to make it not so beholden to a specific date, which it was originally, a date which was in the future when I wrote it and is now in the past, and makes it seem very outdated and very weird. So, but as I was going through the rewrites of it, just like getting rid of the dates and making it more of um, a somewhat near future, um, rather than a specific date, um, I started to realize something. There is a character in this book who is sort of pushed off to the side for the most part. She's in the background for a lot of it, and she's going through some serious issues. She's dealing with abandonment issues. She's dealing with grief from the death of her mother. Uh, Eventually, she becomes part of the bigger story when she finally has a breakdown, and the main character and Ben Franklin come to pull her out of it. But as I'm reading this, as I was rereading it, I'm like, I think this story would be much more interesting if this girl was the main character. And and so that's what I'm going to be attempting to do this month, is to rewrite this book with a completely different protagonist, and try to see where the story goes from that. Um, so we'll see. And since this month is also Thanksgiving here in the U.S., um, I'm going to be traveling back to visit my family in Philadelphia halfway through the month. So we're going to have a little bit of a truncated month in November. Um, I'm going to be doing an episode from Philadelphia um, on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, which I don't have the date right in front of me. Um, and we're probably also going to be doing the discussion of the Blue Sword on that episode, because the week after that, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, is the day that I come back from Philadelphia. I'll actually be arriving probably about 10 minutes before the usual start time of the show. So I will be on my way from the airport and jet lagged. So we're not going to be doing a show that week. So we're going to just have three episodes in November. And they're the first two, this week and next week, we're going to be a little bit more vloggy, talking about the writing process, and also talking about uh, just what it takes to write a story, world building, stuff like that. Some of the stuff that I do when writing. Um, Ava, if you'd like to chime in at some point to talk about some of your creative process with your drawing, because I don't know how many of you have seen this who are regular book club members, or have seen her on her own Facebook page or DeviantArt or anything. But Ava has some fantastic art. She also contributed to the book club with I'll go back here to this wonderful logo. Um, she she drew that for us, and I'm pleased. I'm still floored by that piece of art, and and drawing is as much a creative process, probably even more than writing. Um, so um, so yeah. Um, so as we're talking, um, I guess I can also talk about yesterday. Um, yesterday we a bunch of us at the One Ring, we did a panel at the local at a local convention, Kamikaze Expo, and it was actually our last panel on the Battle of the Five Armies before the movie comes out, probably, most likely, and we had a really good turnout, and we had it was me, Cliff, Christy, Nicole from Tolkien Forever, who are also staff members, and Kathy Garfimal, um, talking about what we can expect with the Battle of Five Armies, some speculation, and I don't want to talk too much about the movies except to say that we sort of carried over a little bit of a conversation that Cliff and Justin had on this past Tuesday about what a hypothetical Silmarillion-based cinematic universe might look like. And it's something I would love to see. It's probably not something that's going to happen anytime soon, but one of the things that we sort of walked away with was the Silmarillion is so dense that you could probably get a good 5, 6, maybe 7 movies out of it, all separate stories that sort of interrelate with each other, kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think would be a really cool thing to see. Again, probably not going to happen, but we can dream, can't we? But one of the people in the audience was asking some questions about the video game and Shadows of Mordor, which I haven't played yet. But then he came up to us after the panel and handed us this. This is a book he wrote, or he co-wrote. It's called Midrealm. And I'm going to be perusing this. It's actually quite a thick book, so it might take a little while. But I'm hoping to get him and or to get both of these writers on the show sometime to discuss this book and their process. It's always nice to meet other writers, especially when we have a special connection with a love of Tolkien, and they both clearly did, and so I'm looking forward to this. I've got a very large to-read list. So what is everybody saying about Silmarillion? They're saying a TV miniseries might work better for the Silmarillion. I agree with that, but I also think that the Silmarillion has so many separate stories that you could probably parse them out into decent feature-length movies within themselves. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. It would be a fun writing exercise for any of us practicing screenwriting. So with let's see, what is Remainder saying? Mine grow almost every day. I'm assuming you're talking about your to read pile. Yeah, my to read pile has grown exponentially ever since I started this show. Just to keep pace with everything, and to try to keep ahead of what I'm trying to talk about on the show. Like I want to make sure that I've read what I talk about, and so it's a lot. What is Aravondi saying? I keep having to turn the volume up because I can't hear over the sound of me chewing my lunch. Uh-oh. Should I speak louder or? Remainder says it doesn't make it easier when I go to the library to find more interesting books. It's very true. And I am planning on bringing a guest on to talk about libraries, because we have some beautiful libraries out here in LA, and I'd love to try to get in there and shoot some video of some really beautiful libraries that we have here in Los Angeles. Aravandi is saying, my to-read pile has grown since I started watching this show. As it probably should. Mine is probably much larger because I'm reading ahead because I'm trying to plan these things out in advance. Like I've got the book for December already picked out, so I need to read that fairly soon. Um, and then that segues into I got an email from Ava a couple days ago about a subject that we discussed briefly last week, but it's something that I think is very relevant that I'd love to talk about more, and that is international authors. Um, as she pointed out very rightly so, that most of the writers that we've been discussing on the show since we started are either American or British writers. Um, and and there are many other writers out there who deserve a closer look from other countries. What is Temple saying? We have that cool library in San Francisco they used in that Meg Ryan movie, City of Angels, I think it's called. I don't even remember. I saw City of Angels once, and that was when it first came out, so I don't really remember it all that well. Rovander says, I used to work at a school library, also my only work I ever had. I loved it. Very cool. What is this here? Oh, we got something on the hotline. Oh, this is from Light of the King. Hi, Josh. I am having computer problems. Hopefully, be able to log into the book club chat in the next 20 minutes or so. Okay. Well, um, if you're not able to log in, Light of the King, at least know that you are missed, and have been missed for the last month or so. Um, I I hope you can make it into the chat. If not, you can still text in. I will get it. Um, so what is Temple saying here? It would be really cool to look at sci-fi from Japan. Jules Verne is French, so much good sci-fi and fantasy international. That's very true. And I am very familiar with some Japanese writers because I used to study Japanese in college. Um, and Ava is saying she also worked at a library. I should also say that my very first job before I was actually legally able to work was at our local library in the town where I grew up. Um, Lots of fun, lots of good memories from there. Um, Maybe I'll have to visit again when I go back, just to see what they've done with the place. It's been a while. So, so what Ava had suggested to me and emailed me about was a couple a couple authors that she pointed out to me. One of them is somebody who you probably might know, Astrid Lindgren, who is best known in America for writing the Pippi Longstocking series. Um, Temple is saying, I worked at an independent bookstore for a while. That probably would have been cool. I would have loved to have done that. There aren't many independent bookstores out here anymore. That's the problem. So Astrid Lindgren, who is a Swedish author, who wrote Pippi Longstocking, and Ava suggested a book to me called, let's see if I can bring it up here, Ronia the Robber's Daughter, which actually sounds quite intriguing. Um, so we might make some of these books of the month later on. Another one that she suggested, and I apologize if I pronounce this this name wrong. A Finnish author named Tove Jansson. Again, I apologize if I pronounced that bad. But she was a children's author, and the book that Ava suggested to me for her, which would probably work well during the winter months, is a book called Moomin Midwinter. It looks like it looks like a kid's book, but it's also an intriguing idea about I'm not sure if the Moomin characters are something she made up or if they're based on something else, but they hibernate during the winter. Um, but the main character in this one wakes up midway through hibernation and explores this totally brand new winter world um, that they've never seen before. Um, Ava's asking, have you guys heard of Moomin? I have not heard of Moomin before this. Um, I'm certainly intrigued by it. I definitely want to read up on it more. So these are some of the suggestions for some international writers and books. And so if anybody else has some good suggestions for international authors that you may know of, that you may like, or some books that they wrote that you really enjoyed, please shoot me an email about it, Sarumann at theonering.net, or you can post to our Facebook page about it. I'd love to get more of an international flavor in the book club, and I know that we have many international members, so. Um, so apparently, there are some people who have heard of Moomin before. I feel like a dumb American now. um, but that's what book clubs are all about. To really expand your horizons, expand what you know. Because the great thing about reading is that there is so much out there that it is physically impossible to read everything. Um, And so there's always new stuff to find. There's always new stuff to discover or rediscover. Um, and so I'm looking forward to checking out some of these books and hopefully getting some more suggestions from all of you. And also if any of you have any suggestions for a book of the month, um, like we've done before, I would be happy to put some in there. Um, Uh, like for instance, this month, The Blue Sword was suggested by Temple. I had never heard of this series or this author before this, and I just finished reading it, and I really did like it. There is a sequel to it, but from what I understand, it's actually more of a prequel. I might check it out. I may move on to something else on my to read list, but I would like to read more into this series. I do like its mythology. Um, Ava is saying, I think it would be cool to learn about authors we might not have heard of before. Absolutely. I'm always looking for new authors. For a long time throughout my life, I was very picky with the authors that I would read. Like unless I had heard of unless I had heard of this author before, I wouldn't read them. Unless the author had come to me highly recommended from somebody I trusted, I wouldn't read them. But now I feel like I've really cut myself short in that regard. So I'm trying so I'm trying to expand that a bit more. Everybody is asking if we want to give a book suggestion, do we tweet you or email you or what? Emailing me might be the easiest way. That way I can just refer back to it um, when if I need to, without having to go through a Facebook feed or a Twitter feed. I can just check my email inbox. So if you just email to Saruman at the One Ring, that'll go to me. It's Saruman with two N's. Ravander says, imagine if you read every book in the world. Overboil brain, if you ask me. Yep, very true. You would definitely overboil your brain if you try to read everything ever. Um, so, so yeah, if you have any book suggestions, send them my way. I'd love to check them out, or even just throw them out to everybody. Like we can all sort of explore all this stuff together without having read them. I actually announced the Blue Sword as I was still reading it. So Temple is saying maybe we can read some Murakami. That's a good idea. I actually have read some Murakami back in the day. Um, um, so Hiramondi saying, not sure I can even pronounce that. Uh, so, talking a little bit about the writing process, a little bit shifting gears here. Um, my own creative process for writing, at least with Ben, I didn't really do a lot of pre-planning with the story. I did a lot of research before I started writing, researching Ben Franklin. I wanted to make sure that I could get him correct. Light of the King is in the chat now. Hello, Light of the King. Temple saying Japanese names are completely phonetic and each syllable is 1 to 3 letters long. Yeah, that's very true. And so yay, Light of the King is back. Hello, Light. Welcome back. It's good to see you in the chat again. So as I was saying, my own creative process with Ben, at least, this one was sort of atypical for me because it all started with a very sort of a generic what if question. What if Ben Franklin were to time travel to today? How would he react to it? And so the book sort of came out of that, and I originally intended it as a short story, just sort of exploring that idea. But as I was doing research into Ben Franklin as a person, just to try to get a handle on how to write him as a character, it was very interesting. He was a very interesting person, and as I was working on it, I started coming up with like some of the intricacies of time travel, what could or couldn't work, what theoretically could happen, creating characters to interact with Ben. Excuse me. And Temple saying, I'm imagining Ben Franklin hanging out in Silicon Valley. I feel like somebody did something like that at some point. I feel like there was a book written like that. If not Ben Franklin, then it was somebody else who was hanging out at Google. I can't remember. It might have been Einstein, maybe Edison. I can't remember. So as I was coming up with an idea for the time travel aspect of it, I started formulating a little bit of a conflict about like somebody trying to use time travel for more nefarious purposes, and from there I sort of had in my head what I kind of wanted to do with it, where I wanted to go with it, and I just started writing. I didn't really have much of an outline outside of like some of the stuff that I had come up with in my head. I didn't have any sort of outline or framework written out. I just started writing it chapter by chapter. I had a couple friends reading it as I wrote, giving me notes, telling me where they thought it might be going or where they expected it to be going, and basically finished the whole thing in a matter of months. Really, I was pounding away on it pretty heavily, and it ended up not being a very long book, but everybody who has read it seems to have really enjoyed it. So so now looking at it again 10 years later, first of all, like I have to keep from cringing at my use of prose in it, because it's I'm very unhappy with my own writing style from 10 years ago. Um, so I'm trying not to beat myself up too much with that, which of course is very difficult to do as a writer, as somebody who's creative. Like they say, you're your own worst critic. Um, so definitely dealing with that quite a bit. Um, and so I kind of like the idea of just doing a complete ground up rewrite with a different main character, which I sort of feel might create a completely different story. And I'm probably going to do it the same way, just sort of doing a, not, I don't want to say stream of consciousness, but definitely like just going for it without too much of a framework in mind and just seeing where it goes. Um, uh, Light of the King is asking, do you ever find yourself struggling to decide on word choices in your stories, or are you more concerned with style? I was more concerned with both, especially when writing Ben this first time, because I wrote it specifically with the Harry Potter audience in mind, and so I was sort of basing a lot of my writing style off of what I was reading in Harry Potter, which I feel like, and I don't want to say this disparaging J.K. Rowling in any way, but at least for the first couple of books, it's definitely written rather simplistically, and or at least like no big words, um, very simple descriptions of stuff. Um, it's not really a challenge to read, so I got a so I really I had a lot of that in mind when writing Ben, and looking at it now, I sort of feel like I kind of went overboard, and I hate to use this, but I hate to use this description, but I sort of feel like I dumbed it down, and so with this rewrite, I want to try to make it um, a little bit more mature in its own sensibilities, and I think having a different main character will certainly help with that. Somebody who's actually going through a very dark period in her life um, will certainly help that. Um, Now, I had uh, there is a Temple said something here. It's hard not to be hard on ourselves when we write. I can read a wonderful description from another writer and find it beautiful, but when I get too descriptive, I feel like I'm being melodramatic. Very true. Um, uh, and yeah, it's like your inner critic must be hanging out with my um, Arabandi saying that little critic in my head is mean. Yeah, without getting too much into the psychological side of it, that little critic in my head as well um, can say some pretty awful things about me as a writer and even as a person, um, which helps nobody. Um, and Light of the King is saying, yes, use those $5 words. And yeah, like I was saying, back then, like 10 years ago, the young adult book audience was only just starting to form from out of the Harry Potter successes. Um, and then, of course, took off many years later. And what I've been noticing in the young adult genre is that um, many of the books that are more successful are the ones that don't talk down to their audience and treat the audience and the story with a bit of maturity. And that's what I want to do with Ben. So I'm actually looking forward to this rewrite. Will I actually hit the NaNoWriMo goal of 50,000 words this month? Probably not, but I'll see how close I can get, and the main thing is to see how much of this story I can get done, because I really want to get this done. Lady of the King says self-negativity is not allowed, but it's hard sometimes. It can be, yeah. Um, and it's something that I think I struggle with. I think most creative people struggle with that in some form or another. Because when you're working on a creative project, um, you do put a lot of yourself into it, and that takes a lot of risk and it takes a lot of vulnerability. Um, and to put yourself out there like that, um, and to have somebody say like, well, this is not that good. I mean, that can be very crushing. Um, just because you've opened yourself up in this very creative way that some people are not going to understand. And you yourself, like you're always like trying to be the best, and you're always trying to do a little bit better. Looking at it critically, it's very hard. Um, Aru Bondi is saying, I won't be able to participate in Nano until I don't have college assignments anymore. Not enough time. I totally understand, Aru. That can take up a lot of time. Temple is saying that's when it's good to hang up inspirational quotes in random places around the house to keep your spirits up. Very true. Um, but like I was saying, that's why I feel like anybody who is willing to put something out there creatively um, is worthy of praise just because of the risk, the personal risk that you take in doing that, in opening yourself up that way. Um, and so I'm always the first to praise any sort of art that comes across my way. Writing, drawing, just because of what they're doing. And there's lots of amazing talent out there, like Ava, for instance, incredible talent, incredible artistic talent, and that is no lie, and that is no hyperbole right there. Like I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Um, and but when I look at my own stuff, like of course we sort of make a beeline for the things that we could improve. And what we see as a major, glaring, horrible mistake is something most people are never even going to notice or register. Um, but that's what happens when you put yourself out there, when you are being that vulnerable. Um, what is Ravander saying? As well, I have a notebook with me wherever I go in case I get ideas for stories or songs, or just need to write down an author's name. Yep, that's a good thing to do, Ravander. I like that idea. I might have to do that more. Um, um, so, and like I was just at a Kamikaze Expo yesterday, down at the LA Convention Center, and you see lots of art there. In the form of comics, in the form of books, movies, TV shows, games, and of course cosplay, which I think is probably the riskiest of art forms because you're putting yourself out there in a very direct sort of way. Your creativity, you're putting out what you love, and you're putting it on yourself. Um, so I always admire cosplayers. Uh, at whatever skill level they have. I have not done much of it myself. Uh, what is Temple saying here now? I should do that more myself. Right now, I have a little dinosaur made of paper hanging on my door. I write new little word bubbles for him every once in a while. He cheers me up. I named him Pepe. That is really adorable, Temple. um, and Ava is saying, when you have an idea, it's best to write or draw it immediately. Absolutely. And one of the things that I always turn to for inspiration is music. Um, like the piece that I played at the start of the show. That one is if I'm working on something that um, is very fantasy or high adventure, I'll usually just listen to that one for a little bit. Um, uh, just to sort of get the creative juices flowing. There are many other pieces that I'll listen to that actually help me sort of plan out specific scenes that I want to have happen. What is this now? Light of the King saying, I'm working on my Galadriel costume for Battle of the Five Armies in December. Cool. I don't know if you're planning on going to any line party, Light, but um, if you are going to go to one, we are going to be having a line party at the Chinese Theater again this year. So please come by. What is Eric saying here? The closest I've come to a costume for Battle of the Five Armies is wearing my elf ear cuffs to the theater. Very cool. Yeah, Light. I played a little song at the beginning of the show, actually before the show started, so it will not be on the YouTube archive because copyright. And when I say little, I mean it's a 10-minute piece. But it's a piece by Thomas Bergerson called "That's a Rap," and you can find it on YouTube. It's very easy to look up. Light of the King is also saying I'm waiting on the date for the LA premiere. Yeah, we're not. It's probably going to be happening early December. We don't have a specific date yet. Although a friend of mine sent me a link, or sent me an interesting link about a premiere event in LA, which I need to look up again, which might be the actual date of Battle of the Five Armies here in LA. Because the way they're going to be doing it is London is first. That's the big world premiere. Then they're going to do the East Coast premiere in New York, and then they're going to do the West Coast premiere in LA. So how that all will fall schedule-wise, I'm not entirely sure of yet. But as soon as we know, we will definitely let all of you know. That was something a lot of people were asking at the panel yesterday, was if we knew when the LA premiere was going to be happening. Right now, we don't. Or I should say, right now, Warner hasn't announced it, and so that's pretty much where we stand right now. But yeah, and that panel was like, going back to that panel, that was a lot of fun, because right now, what is it Aravondi saying? All I want is that trailer. I have a feeling, even though they haven't announced it, that we're probably going to get a new trailer within the next week or so. It might be attached to Interstellar this weekend, which I'm going to see on Wednesday. I can't wait. It's probably the most anticipated movie for me of this year, next to The Hobbit, of course. Excuse me. So, what is Light of the King saying? Well, anyway, you should go to London for the premiere and be our book club representative. If you can, please do. And Ravander says, I think we'll be happy about the trailer, but at the same time, I'll be feeling sad because I know it will be the last we will see of Tolkien's world on the big screen when it comes to a theater. And that's very true. Until, like, I sort of feel like we're not going to see anything new Tolkien-wise in a theatrical way, at least for another 20 years or so, if somebody tries to remake The Lord of the Rings, which I don't think anybody is really going to do after the success of the last trilogy for a good long while, at least a generation, I would say. Um, um, but beyond that, like anything else that Tolkien wrote, the only thing that anybody has movie rights to is the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Everything else is still held by the family, and they're staying true to Tolkien's wishes, which were that he did not want those adapted. Um, so we may not be able to see anything like that until they go public domain, which will happen in 2043, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but that's 70 years after the death of Tolkien, which, according to British copyright law, is when when it goes public domain. Um, but I don't know whether or not Christopher Tolkien is a copyright holder on it because of how he edited the Silmarillion and the history of Middle Earth. Um, so that still might not qualify. Again, I don't know for sure. Um, what is everybody's talking about the movie here? let me go back up here a little bit. Uh, 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 okay, so everybody's talking about going to see the movie. Um, what is Temple here saying? I cried during the credits of Return of the King because there wasn't going to be another movie the next year, so I'm sure that will happen again. Yeah, it will. It's going to be a while, and actually, I mentioned during our panel yesterday that this was going to be our last movie-related panel anyway, which we have been doing since before Fellowship of the Ring came out, because this is the last movie in what they are now calling the Middle Earth Saga, and this is our last panel before it opens, and so this was technically going to be our last movie related panel, and this woman came up to us after the panel, practically in tears, saying, "I hope you guys don't disappear. I love you too much." And Cliff and I were like, just really just took her hand and reassured her, "Listen, Tolkien fandom was here long before these movies came out, and it will be here long after they have left the theaters. So uh, it, we're not going anywhere." Um, Aonway is here. Hello. Um, I was just talking about Tolkien fandom and how um, the One Ring. We're not planning on disappearing after the movies are done. No way, no how. Um, we're still going to be having events. We're going to be doing the Baggins picnic every year until nobody shows up anymore. Um, we did it. We started it around Two Towers, and we have done it every year since then. We haven't missed a year. Um, Same with the Tolkien Toast, which has been going on since long before the movies came out, and this will continue long after. Um, so yeah, the our events, our fandom, we're bigger than a release schedule of a movie. So we're going to be around for a good long time. So it was it was kind of heartbreaking to see that woman come up and just say, "I hope you guys don't disappear. Please don't disappear. Like, uh, trust us, we don't want to disappear. We're not going anywhere." And like I said, even if I just even if we're like only 5 people, our Tolkien fandom is still going to keep going. Um, what is Aonway saying here? Sorry, I'm a little late. Kind of forgot because I was reading The Passing of the Great Company. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. um, that is a really good chapter. So that there is nothing to apologize for there, Aonway. It is time well spent. So we're getting to the end here a little bit. I didn't really have too much to talk about this week. Like I was saying, this month is going to be a little bit more vloggy, um, as I attempt my own rewrite of my book. Um, but we've got a new book of the month. I'd love to hear from some of you about any of your creative processes. Um, as we talk about that, we're not going to have an episode at the end of the month just because I am either going to be on the road from the airport or I'm going to be completely jet lagged. So we're only going to have 3 episodes this month, and one of them is going to be from the other side of the country, out in Philadelphia, as I go home for Thanksgiving. But just to remind everybody, our book of the month for November is The Blue Sword by Robin Mckinley. Really, really good, really solid book. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for the suggestion, Temple. Um, I I enjoyed it immensely. I think a lot of you will enjoy it too. It's a good solid fantasy book. Um, that I think a lot of us will enjoy this. Um, as for me, I'm going to be reading ahead a little bit. I just finished Blue Sword last night, so I'm going to be reading on to December's book of the month, which I have picked, but won't tell you until the end of the month. And also reading some other stuff and writing a book, and also day job. So there's nothing too much going on in my life right now. Temple is saying my computer survived the show. Yay! Congratulations. Hopefully it will survive. Ava's saying maybe send us some pictures of the landmarks featured in Ben. That's actually a really good idea, Ava. I had a bunch somewhere saved on an old computer, but I need to take better ones with a higher res camera now that I can. So I'm going to be taking kind of an extended trip to Philly this year, so I'm going to try to do that a bit more and put some up for everybody to see. That would be a good way to sort of familiarize everybody with Ben and what I'm doing. So I hope you all are having a good weekend. I hope you all had a fun and safe Halloween. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you all this month on writing, on the creative process. And I will see you all next week. Maybe talking a bit more about the creative process. And again, our book of the month is The Blue Sword by Robin Mckinley. Go read it. You'll like it. I promise. So I will see you all next week, and never stop reading.